What if there's a world where you posted it and you actually only got 25 applicants, but all 25 of those were hyper qualified for that role? And the only way that that could ever occur is if you had a dual-sided platform that's the source of truth from a data perspective for both the employer and the job seeker. So we really built the B2B software as the wedge to get the data to be in a position long-term to compete with the giants that we're all so beholden to at this point. And the third-party data is, strong, and it's a valuable offering, but it is essentially a muddied down version of what you would get with a LinkedIn recruiter. However, over time, that first-party data set we're building is going to continue to grow, and that's how we actually disrupt a LinkedIn recruiter versus being reliant upon, a scraped-down version of their data set.
Hey, this is Craig Fisher, and you are listening to Inside Talent. My guest today is Brandon Amoroso from Scalis. Brandon, how are you? What's happening?
I'm doing well. Just another busy week. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. So I've been bouncing around the country with Brandon for little over maybe almost a year at dinners that he hosts all over the place. It's a unique business model. So Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about Scalis and about what you're doing to roll it out?
Yeah, so Scalis was the byproduct of the pain points and frustrations that I had using LinkedIn and a legacy applicant tracking system at my last business, which was a Shopify professional services firm. We primarily hired for engineering talent for over 4.5 years. And for over 4.5 years, there was never any improvement or optimization of the quality of candidates that were being recommended to us, nor the ones that were applying. And that made no sense to me because we were providing an immense amount of scorecard data, feedback, rejection reasons, et cetera, to the systems that we were using. I thought incorrectly that would somehow be used to improve the outcomes within the platform. And the real tipping point for us was about 4 months before I sold that prior business. My younger brother came to me and showed me the job seeker side of the experience, specifically the recommendations that he was receiving from LinkedIn, Indeed, and ZipRecruiter. And they ranged from he should be the CTO of a Fortune 500 company to the air traffic controller at the Dallas airport, neither of which he should be doing. And we realized, I was just a downstream recipient of what were these fundamentally flawed recommendations. And so that's what we set out to solve with Scalis, is why are all these platforms so bad at matching the right candidates to the right open roles and vice versa. And I had a 2-year earnout with the last business, which actually ended up being a blessing in disguise because we got to sit on the sidelines and do a lot of research and discovery in the space, but almost more importantly, see how AI was going to hurt or hinder the recruiting space. And what we've seen is it's one of the few business functions that's actually been negatively impacted by AI. If you look at sales, development, finance, they've all experienced massive increases in efficiency with AI. But if you look at the recruiting metrics, 2025 versus 2022, applicant volume is up by almost 600%. Time to hire is up by about 2 weeks. Cost per hire is up by about $2,000. And so that's what really excited us to dive in here and figure out why. Like, why is this happening? And there's a lot of challenges, but the biggest gap is the one-way flow of information and data that exists in the legacy recruitment stack. So you've got a separate tool for sourcing, you've got a separate applicant tracking system. Then you start to see companies bolting on third-party scheduling tools, third-party interview tools, third-party skills assessment platforms. And it becomes expensive and cumbersome, which is a problem in and of itself. But the real issue is the data loss throughout each of those steps with no feedback loop going into the sourcing platforms. So quite literally, these sourcing platforms, whether it's job boards or these outreach systems, have no idea what happens to the candidate after they click apply. So all that scorecard data, the rejection reasons, the skills assessment data, the candidate notes, that's all siloed in these downstream tools. And without that feedback loop, there's nothing to train off of for the AI to improve over time. And so that's essentially what we've done at Scalis, is collapse sourcing to offer letter signed in one system to be able to aggregate all that candidate data to fine tune the recommendations engine and to power our agentic co-pilot Bella that sits alongside our customers, helping them with sourcing, pre-screening candidates via the AI interviewer, inbound prioritization, interview scheduling, interview intelligence, etc. And launched mid to late last summer, and have just been out in market hosting a lot of these dinners with folks like yourself and others in the space in order to network and connect and learn from the community. We've done over 41 of them already this year, so we've been living out of a suitcase, but it's been fun. And outside of the fact that obviously it drives a lot of business for us, we've seen so much just ancillary benefits occur, whether it's like a recruiter who just got laid off who's now getting hired by somebody else who was at the dinner, or just for me to get to learn a ton, especially when we get into like markets that we don't necessarily service today. I think the best example of that is when we hosted a dinner in Knoxville, Tennessee, and everyone there was in like high volume labor staffing and recruiting. And the pain points that they face are so much different than the charter school who's coming to our dinner in LA, or the AI company that's coming to the dinner in San Francisco. And so it's been a tremendous source of feedback and insights that I can then bring into the product team and help, continue to innovate and build the system. So
I love all that. So a couple of things, and I've got so many thoughts. First of all, I love watching the demo of your product, because you're basically showing, well, it can be whatever you want. And literally it can. But from a sourcing perspective, you're really giving a solid alternative to LinkedIn, for instance, and companies that rely heavily on what LinkedIn does, which some things are good, right? Some things, as you say, not necessarily as good. Talk a little bit about that real quick, and the kind of data you're able to get to, and how that's helping sourcing teams.
Yeah, so you have three different contributing factors to the talent pool that the sourcing agent is able to go through. One, and this is what everybody has access to, is the third-party data sets that are provided by third-party data providers like People Data Labs, Crust Data, Crunchbase, et cetera. So that gets us, a monthly flat file provided by these third-party vendors of anywhere between like 1.3 to 1.4 billion profiles. Then we go through it, clean it for accuracy, email verification, et cetera. That gets you down to like 800 to 850 million profiles. So that is a combination of LinkedIn, Indeed, GitHub, other third-party directories and resources, thousands of different sources that they're scraping from. So that's one. Second is all of the historical applicant data from the ATS. And one of the benefits to having both ATS and sourcing inside one place, outside of the fact that sourcing trains off of the ATS data, is that you are able to actually source from within your applicant tracking system. So candidate reactivation is a real thing versus being something that we all like to talk about and theorize how great it would be if we could actually tap back into that silver medal candidate from 2 years ago.
Right.
And then the third, which is really going to be our long-term moat and continue to be a huge selling point for why you would adopt something like Scalis, is our own job seekers. So we have about just over 400,000 job seekers on the platform to date. And that's just from the last 7 months alone through organic growth. That'll be close to 3 million by the end of this year, tens of millions by next year. And we're able to take those profiles. We have all of their application data associated with any of the roles that they've applied to within the Scalis ecosystem. So we're able to be significantly more targeted and fine-tuned with where we are recommending them to apply and how we're recommending to employers who they should be looking at. So those are the three currently. And over 10% of the hires on the platform this year have come from that third set. Even though it is a smaller subset at this point, we're able to be so much more targeted with where we're pushing them and what recommendations we're providing, because we just have an immense amount of data that we can work with to help lift up both sides. Because our ideal state here is, there's no reason why as a job seeker you should have to submit 5,000 applications in the hopes of even getting one interview. And as an employer, there's no reason why you have to get 5,000 applicants in the hopes of even getting, 10 to 20 that are qualified for the position. What if there's a world where you posted it and you actually only got 25 applicants, but all 25 of those were hyper qualified for that role? And the only way that that could ever occur is if you had a dual-sided platform that's the source of truth from a data perspective for both the employer and the job seeker. So we really built the B2B software as the wedge to get the data to be in a position long term to compete with the giants that we're also beholden to at this point. And the third party data is, strong, and it's a valuable offering, but it is essentially a muddied down version of what you would get with a LinkedIn recruiter. However, over time, that first party data set we're building is going to continue to grow. And that's how we actually disrupt a LinkedIn recruiter versus being reliant upon, a scraped down version of their data set.
I'm a big fan of all that. And I'm a LinkedIn recruiter user, so I just like alternatives. I'm a big fan of that. All right, so you're basically, able to offer everything up to onboarding in one place, right? And does that mean that you also work side by side other large applicant tracking systems?
We are always removing the applicant tracking system.
Mm-hmm.
And as a byproduct of replacing the ATS, that's when you see these other third-party tools fall off of their tech stack. So if they're using a greenhouse as an example, and then they're using like Guide or Modern Loop or GoodTime for scheduling, that's no longer needed because now they're using Scalis as the ATS, and we have all the interview functionality built natively within the platform. Same for like a MetaView or a BrightHire when it comes to interview intelligence. So we're always displacing the ATS. And as a byproduct of us being an all-in-one solution, that's when the other tools fall off. So it becomes a pretty strong selling point for the finance team or the C-level leaders who are looking to do more with less. Like, why do we need 5 or 6 different tools to go from sourcing to offer letter signed when we can just use one? And there is the legacy like talk track of you have to go point solutions to get best in breed. But as we see with the sourcing example, sourcing is actually made stronger by not being a point solution because it has access to all of that downstream data that automatically funnels back into the recommendations engine and the agent to improve the quality of candidates we're bringing to our customers when they are running those searches. Especially once you get into some of these like more evergreen, high volume positions, there's just a tremendous amount of training data that if you were using point solutions, they're not talking to each other and that feedback loop isn't occurring. Mm-hmm. So that's really been one of the biggest selling points for us.
Yeah, so I like hearing that. So what types of industries, niches, sized companies are attracted to that sort of thing?
Right now, smallest customer is about 70 employees. Largest is 2,500, public organization. And over the next 6 months, you'll see the 4,000 to like 7,000 employee headcount range start to activate on the platform. Mm-hmm. Our sales cycle is longer because we're not a point solution. So you're not plugging us on top of your ATS. We're the full recruitment infrastructure, which makes the sales cycle longer. But we are very stubborn in that in order to solve for this problem, you really do need to be all in one for all of the aforementioned reasons. And so that's the current headcount typically. And over 70% of our customers are rip and replace. The other 30% are totally net new. And within that rip and replace, usually it's a specialized ATS, but sometimes it's, the folks who are using Bamboo or ADP or Workday or TriNet or whatever HRIS rippling, platform offers a native recruit module. It's always like the redheaded stepchild of that company's like tech stack. And so they grow out of it pretty quickly, and we integrate with all those solutions. So as soon as the offer letter is signed, we're pushing the candidate and all their information into, the Ripplings or the, ADPs of the world for onboarding. So that's the typical makeup. And right now, most of the businesses are SaaS, AI, professional services. We have a few like high volume customers that do like automotive technician hiring or like sales hiring for cold calling and things like that. Because we've been targeting where it's easiest for us to win. And given all of our background and experience and C-level investment from the greenhouses and levers of the world, that is where we've been focused. But we've started to get a lot of interest from senior living facilities, education, transportation and logistics, manufactured homes. And I'm actually more excited about that long term Because right now, a lot of the Scalis job seeker profiles, they do have LinkedIn profiles. We just know way more about them, which is valuable. But for like a senior living facility, most of their applicants do not have a LinkedIn profile. And so now with Scalis, they have a Scalis profile, and we have a one-of-one proprietary data set. And when we're selling to the next employer, we're not just selling to them the end-to-end recruiting software. We're selling to them, as soon as you post that role, we already have 100,000 job seekers in your vertical that we're going to be able to match directly into those positions and reduce your time to hire and all of the metrics associated with that sourcing funnel. So that's what I'm really excited about long-term for us.
I like it. It's the utopia we've all dreamed of many times, and all we got to do is hang in there a year or two, and it's going to all be coming together. So in the meantime, it feels like your Scalis is ripe for being gobbled up by a larger player to just utilize your technology with their ATS. Thoughts?
From like an acquisition standpoint?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've been approached by some of the larger players in the space, but given where we're headed and the position that we have currently, it's not something that we're interested in exploring. Fortunately, we had an exit before this. Now, it wasn't, a $1 billion tech exit by any means, but it has allowed us to sort of control and choose our own destiny here and be stubborn in that we are going to be all in one. Not a lot of pre-seed VCs are out there writing $3 million checks for you to develop an end-to-end system before you even go to market and start generating revenue. But that's what we did. And that's why even coming out of the gates, we're already supporting, mid-market orgs that used to be using, a greenhouse and 4 other different tools. Now they actually are only using Scalis. That's not typically how a startup would like come out of the gates. So we've got so much ahead of us over the next 18 to 24 months. And I look at a lot of the legacy solutions and they're already gobbled up by PE. And that's one of the sort of the openings that has been provided to us, is because they're now owned by PE, the innovation has been stifled, the price has gone up, the customer service has disappeared. And so that's the area that we're currently winning in. And I'm not confident at this point that there'd be a partner out there who could bring us in and actually be able to give us because the selling point is always additional resources and more capital and more marketing dollars and whatnot, but the reality is often far more bleak than that. And I think where we're headed is really exciting. So yeah, so that's fun, and agreed. And I'm rooting for you, and I think this is going to be a fun journey to watch for me. So let's talk about your go-to-market strategy a little bit. I'm a big fan of this plan of yours to just go buy dinners in all the cities where you might have a buyer and invite people to just get together and commune about how recruiting shouldn't suck or hiring shouldn't suck. And you don't do much of a pitch, a little bit, but you're gaining fans all over the place with this approach. Tell me all about it. Yeah, so way back when, like 2022, when we were just thinking about this as an idea, I did a ton of outreach to do like coffee chats or buy somebody drinks or lunch or whatever it may be. One-to-one, which is not scalable. And also for the person on the other end, not a whole lot of value provided. I mean, they get to meet me and I could, be ridiculous and self-absorbed and say that that's, valuable, but really it's not. And what they're looking for is connection with other recruiters in the space and getting to learn. And so the natural extension of that was, why don't we just host dinners and bring together 8 to 12, though you were at the one in Austin where we did 35, anywhere in that range of, your CHROs, your CPOs, your VP of people, director of recruiting, et cetera, and just give them a space to be able to connect in a very low stakes environment where there's not an aggressive vendor pitch or angle associated with it. Obviously, everyone who's there could at some point be using Scalis, but that's not the end goal. And because they're not very sales oriented, they've actually ended up benefiting sales more than if we were really aggressive with it from a sales perspective. And since our sales cycle is long, a lot of the people who come to the dinner, they couldn't even potentially use Scalis until like 2027 or even 2028. And it's all
Mhm.
about building these relationships and networking now, because buying in this space is so often dominated by the trust factor and whether or not you have that faith in the vendor to be able to execute for you. And people have been burned quite a bit in this industry with tech that has not stood up to the fancy demos that have been given to them. So
Mhm.
that's been one of the ways that we've tried to stand out and just like show that we're willing to do the work. I mean, I've been in 41 different cities this year already. We're not even
Mhm.
halfway through the year.
Yeah.
Name another vendor that's willing to put in that effort and show up in market and network and learn from the attendees. That's not, something that anyone else has done. So
Certainly
we
not
also
another founder.
yes, and also we need to be scrappy. We don't have workday HR tech budget. I can't go take over an entire section there and you know do things like that. And so we had to think through how can we get our names out there without totally breaking the bank either. And so this has been the most effective way to do it. Not to
Yeah.
mention all of the other like co-hosts that we've been able to bring in and participate with us. We're about to do a whole week in Boston, a whole week in New York with ChartHop, who's a great like headcount planning software and solution trending into like HRS category.
That's
And
fun.
now we're able to do account mapping and go to market with them. And we did that with Warp, which is like an AI payroll platform that's post Series A for our New York dinners a couple weeks ago. And so it's opened us up to a lot of integrations and partnerships as well, which has been good.
Yeah. I mean, I myself have already met all kinds of interesting people just from the few dinners I've been with you at, which is really cool. And so you are doing that connector thing, and this is the advice that I give a lot of vendors. Right? It's like, I've been an entrepreneur in this space forever, and I spent the first 10 years of that going around and picking up tabs. I mean, literally, that's the game. And it is that trust over time, that repeatability and dependability that you're going to be there, and you're not just, hey, we got a marketing budget for Q1 of 2027 and we're going to hit it hard, because that's not how software gets sold, right? It's a
No.
year long process and more.
And it's the consistency.
Mhm.
Every week that passes, it just continues to build more awareness. There's certainly the snowball effect that's occurring. And, now when I'm showing up, if I do go to a conference, like I'm not a stranger. I know,
Right.
a third of the people there. And then those people are introducing me to other people. And like they know that I'm not going to come in with some like crazy sales pitch either. Like we really are just like networking and building relationships. And so that makes them even more willing to help and support. And so like the dinners have just been growing rapidly because we go back to the same cities and the people who came before want to come again. They want to share it with their friends. And it certainly helps that we have the platform to back it up, but you need
Right.
both. You
Yeah.
need the sales and go to market. You need the platform. If the platform just existed in a vacuum and nobody knew about it, well, then that's not a business. And
Right.
if I was out here hosting dinners and the platform stunk or we didn't have all the functionality that we claim to have, then we wouldn't be able to support the dinners because there'd be no money coming into the business to then pay for the dinners. So you
Mhm.
need to have both. And so I own the sales and go to market, and that's my specialty and strong suit. And then we've got my younger brother and co-founder handling products and all of our advisors. And that's actually been one of the coolest things is we've hired from the dinners. So,
Mhm.
directors of TA who want to jump over to the dark side of the vendor side, they're now running our customer success and implementation program. And that in and of itself is a selling point for customers because they're talking to people who were in their seats for the last decade or the last 20 years. And so you're
That's
not
right.
dealing with somebody who's never recruited before for your implementation. You're not dealing with somebody who's never recruited for your ongoing customer success. So we're more strategic than, a traditional vendor as well.
You've got quite a good team that travels with you.
Yes.
Part canine, part new fiance.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, Tori, my fiance, is probably at like 70% of the dinners with me. And that's been just really fun to get to experience that with somebody who's also an integral part of the other half of your life. And it makes it easier on me to like keep up this volume as well. Because if I had been doing, the last 4 months of dinners completely solo, that becomes pretty lonely and isolating quickly.
And
And
intense, yeah.
there's definitely more of like a human element approach added to it. Like, I'm not some like robotic AI company founder. Like, I'm a real human being, and here's my fiance to prove it. And people ask if she's going to come to the dinners when I re-invite them to dinners, because nobody cares about me. They just want to hang out with Tori.
Right.
So she's been crushing it. And then we have Bella in tow, and even she came to like the Talent Net Live. And who doesn't love a cute little Cavapoo puppy?
Yeah.
And we like to have some fun with it too. That's why we named our AI agent after the dog.
Right.
Yes, it's business and it's serious, but you still need to be a little lighthearted and have some fun with it.
So Bella was a great part of Talent Net Live. She made all the highlight reels,
Yes.
which is cool. And boy, we had fun in Austin. So I hope we get to do that again, and I hope they both get to attend. All right. So Brandon, this has been a fascinating talk. I appreciate what you're doing and the way you're approaching it, and I will continue to support. And we'll look forward to seeing you here somewhere in the near future. And thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We'll see you next time on Inside Talent. Thank you for listening to Inside Talent with Craig Fisher. Please follow and like Inside Talent on your favorite podcast platform to stay up to date, and we'll see you next time.